So my name is Layane Alhorr. I'm a PhD candidate at Harvard University, and today I'm going to be presenting a part of my thesis, which is my job market paper, titled Virtual Windows Through Glass Walls, Digitization for Mobility-Constrained Female Entrepreneurs. And so just before I start, I wanted to just get a head count of how many of you have a Facebook or an Instagram account. No shame if you want to admit. Great. So usually when I present this to economists, most people do not have one. And so I have to explain a lot what this is doing. But broadly, I'm going to be studying the impact of social media on female entrepreneurship in conservative settings. So I want to start by motivating this paper by explaining its title or unpacking its title. So what do I mean by virtual windows? Here, I mean the set of conservative social norms, transportation costs, safety concerns, and childcare responsibilities that constrain the mobility and work opportunities for millions of women around the world. This happens in developed countries. For example, in France, 14% of the gender wage gap can be explained by differences in men and women's willingness to commute. But it's even exacerbated in developing countries where social norms might be more binding. In the context of Pakistan, for example, we have evidence showing that women need to be paid the equivalent of half of their monthly household expenditure just to be willing to cross their village border and take a training just outside of it as opposed to inside it. These norms are binding around the world, yet flexible work opportunities remain limited for women, and particularly those with limited education or income. And so women mostly resort to home-based entrepreneurship for an economic livelihood. Yet, given that women are mostly operating behind closed walls at home, they remain limited in their ability to reach customers outside of their social networks of friends and family members. With this backdrop, digitization is increasingly proposed as potentially a silver bullet that can help female entrepreneurs access wider markets from the safety of their homes. And this is the idea of these virtual windows across these glass walls. In this paper, I'm particularly going to be focusing on the impact of Facebook, given its widespread access, particularly for low-income women and low-income individuals generally. Today, Facebook has more than 2.93 billion monthly active users, and the rates are particularly escalating in developing countries where access to smartphones and the internet is increasing. And so in this paper, the broad question is, can digitization unlock market access and growth for female entrepreneurs, and particularly those living in conservative communities? Why is this interesting? On one hand, we highlighted this promise of virtual technologies, but it's unclear that digitization can help women in conservative communities for two reasons. The first, if I as a woman cannot interact with strangers, it's unclear that going on Facebook is going to help me. Potentially, the social norms that constrain my interactions would simply be mirrored on online platforms just as well. Second, we know from the entrepreneurship literature that a lot of small businesses actually, or business owners, end up being necessity entrepreneurs or subsistent entrepreneurs or reluctant entrepreneurs. If low mobility women are more likely to have limited skills, aspirations, or resources, then giving them digital tools might not help them grow anyway because they have so many other constraints. So in this paper, I shed light on this tension through a couple of experiments in the context of Jordan, which has the third lowest female labor force participation rate just after war in Yemen and Iraq. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the paper. So if you plan to zone out, this is not the slide to do it. So for a quick background, first, I want to highlight what digital platforms might do for female entrepreneurs particularly. I do just as the first pass a description through online ethnographic work by documenting how male versus female users operate online. And I find two main findings. First, women are more likely to be operating in gender segregated spaces. What does that mean? That means that on Facebook today, there are dozens and even hundreds of women-only Facebook groups that are locked. What that means is for you to enter these groups, the administrator or the owner of the group has to individually verify that you are a woman. And then once you enter that group, you will find hundreds of thousands of other women trading with each other. And so that already suggests that even in online spaces, there is a demand for safe spaces for women. Second, I also find that when trading in mixed groups, women are more likely than men to hide their pictures and to hide their names. And so broadly, this suggests that some norms are mirrored online, but that digital spaces can still offer women the flexibility to operate within them in a way that doesn't break the social norm. Given this background, what my experiment tries to do is to give women the ability to market their business broadly without necessarily increasing their personal visibility. And I do that by separating the business's ID from the owner's own visibility. The experiment is really meant to be a proof of concept where I try to increase the first stage in many ways. First, I offer women online storefronts. I help them manage them. I offer ads, and I give them an online training that I create in collaboration with local social media influencers. And perhaps unsurprisingly for some of you, this seems to work. It increases business survival and sales, but it works particularly well for women with the lowest mobility. And so it does seem that although we might expect that low mobility women have other constraints, actually they are still market constrained, and digitization can help them unlock market access. And so given the promising results, why weren't women using this in the first place? I ran a second experiment where I give them an online training alone, similar to the type of content that is widely available today on YouTube. And I document that low mobility women are actually less likely to sign up to the training, and that conditional on random access, the effect of the training alone without the logistical support is limited. And so together, these two experiments suggest that digital technologies may be transformative for mobility-constrained women, but without the necessary support, they might fail to attract and to benefit the most constrained among them. I'm going to proceed now by talking with a bit more detail about the intervention and the results, but broadly, this paper is related to three literatures. The first is, of course, on gender. The second is on business growth and entrepreneurship. And the third is on digitization and social media's impact on society today. And so as I highlighted, the context is Jordan. It's a relatively conservative country. It has the third lowest female labor force participation rate and one of the highest gender gaps in entrepreneurship. My sample is going to be taken at the national level, so I do have some variation in the norms that these women are facing. The population of businesses is going to be relatively small-scale businesses. So these are women who produce food and sell it, accessories, clothes, homemade soap, etc. And importantly, one thing to keep in mind is the nature of the business itself is still offline. So these are women who are still producing goods and services that are meant to be traded in person. What is being digitized is just this access to customers, which is similar to how a lot of people use social media for market access today. So what does the first experiment do? What I do is for each woman in my sample, which is around 1,100 women for the first experiment, I link each woman to a team, a logistical support team that communicates with her over WhatsApp and asks her for information of her business. So pictures of the business, description, name, and in return creates a business page for her on Facebook and helps her manage it, and also gives ads. For those of you who do not have Facebook, this is what a Facebook business page looks like. So this is an example of a page that we have created. It has a logo. It has some information about where the business is based. It has pictures and contact information. This is another example of accessories that were being sold. The second part of the intervention, and remember these were bundled, is a training program that I created in collaboration with local but successful social media influencers. And the training had around 30 short videos of around 10 minutes each, and particularly focused on two things. The first, the need for women to go beyond their immediate social network. And the second is if they are concerned about breaking social norms, such as showing their face when they're marketing their business, the training also taught them how to market the business without necessarily showing their face. So for example, you can take pictures and videos of your product with a voiceover without showing your face. The control group didn't get much besides just getting a logo for their business. The randomization was done at the individual level, and most of my outcomes are survey outcomes. So broadly, this is how I present my results. So the way to read this is you have the outcomes on the vertical axis, you have control means. So this is the average of the outcome for the control group, and then you have the effects. But broadly, what I can say is that the take-up was relatively high for the logistical support arm, i.e. almost 50% of women did send me the information that I asked for, and around 60% started the training, but the training take-up drops off quickly, so only 16%, watched more than an hour of the training. So this already suggests that any effects that I show you today are going to be driven by the logistical support as opposed to the training program. Second, I see that on average, business survival does increase by about 7 percentage points. And I also see an increase in overall sales. The effects on profits are noisy, but an overall index of business survival also increases. I also see a higher likelihood of selling to strangers and to clients that the business owner found online. And so this is all good. What about heterogeneity? Who benefits from this? Is it the women who are already doing well, who are already liberated in some way, who are already going out? Or is it that these digital technologies could be helpful for mobility-constrained women? I construct a mobility index using baseline variables of mobility, and I find that women with below mobility are actually more likely to benefit. And so what these two graphs show is for the treatment group, we see an overall shift in the business index to the right, which means that throughout the distribution, businesses are doing better for the treatment group compared to the control group. Meanwhile, for high mobility women, we don't see much effect, which might suggest that these women were not market constrained at baseline. And I confirm this heterogeneity by looking at data-driven approaches to explore heterogeneity, for example, machine learning algorithms. These algorithms also suggest strong heterogeneity by baseline level of business performance, which is consistent with the entrepreneurship literature, suggesting that if the business already had relatively higher revenue or business assets at baseline, they were also more likely to benefit from the intervention. And so this makes sense. These are known to be potentially gung-ho entrepreneurs. And so it looks like most of the effect is actually coming from the quadrant of women who have high ability, i.e. above median business revenue at baseline, but low mobility. And so it's potentially this mass of women who are talented, but mobility constrained at baseline. And then you might also think that baseline revenue or business assets are correlated with resources as opposed to talent. And so I have another measure of baseline ability, particularly because these businesses had sent me pictures of their products and services at baseline. I rate these pictures, not me personally, but a team of undergraduate Jordanian students rate these pictures. And I also split the sample by those with above versus below median rating. And I see that the effects are also coming from those with relatively high picture rating. These are just a couple of examples of someone who produces accessories. The one on your right would be a high rating. The one on your left would be a low rating of the product and picture. And so, as I said, I have a second experiment just investigating why women weren't already doing this. The second training program is fully asynchronous online, and it's basically a business training program. These are usually better pixelated on smaller screens. But basically, this training teaches women how to operate a business from home and how to market it on social media, but I still see high selection. So women with higher mobility are significantly more likely to watch the training and to sign up for the training. Women with higher networks, higher number of friends, higher education are significantly more likely to sign up for the training, which suggests that there is strong selection. And then conditional on taking the training randomly at random, the effects of the training is still limited. And so to conclude, this project broadly provides evidence on the potentially transformative role of technology, particularly for talented but low mobility women, if logistical support is provided. It's less the case if we just give an online training. These online trainings might have much less bite. For policy implications, I wanted to highlight one policy, for example, that Facebook has, or product that Facebook has, called Pages You May Like. Pages You May Like is a feature on Facebook that basically provides free advertisements for businesses. And so to the extent that it's hard for us to provide the service and it's hard for people to learn it on their own, tech companies today do have the tools to just provide this type of free advertisement in lower income settings and particularly marginalized business owners. And then also as generations grow up, it seems that younger generations are able to use this technology. The average age in my sample was 42-year-old women. And so, the younger the business owners, potentially logistical constraints might be less binding. And I wanted to end with a couple of open questions, particularly when thinking about the role that Facebook business pages can play for small businesses. The first is today when we think about creditworthiness for business owners, we don't have a lot of information to assess their potential. There's paper, for example, by Natalia Rigol and co-authors about, community members know how to identify high potential entrepreneurs, but it seems that business pages could have that information because in them you'll see the business age, the type of products that's there, turnover, and then number of likes on the business page, which is one form of community support. To what extent does that predict the return on additional cash? That's something that I'm working to evaluate next. And then also, can a digital footprint lead to more formalization of businesses, especially that me as a business owner being visible to many customers also means that I'm visible to my government. And so potentially that leads to higher registration and potentially higher income for governments. And there's potentially a trade-off between technology adoption and this pressure to register and formalize. Thank you so much.